Thank you to CK for this wonderful platform. I think I was just thinking in my mind, this is basically like a conference that we used to attend all the time, except that now it's of course virtual in the comfort of your own home. And important thing, there's no food provided, but I think CK will find out a solution for that eventually. Right. So with Alibaba Cloud, I'm with Alibaba Cloud. I'm a solutions architect there. And today we're talking more about the logistics solutions. And within the next couple of slides, I try to frame why Alibaba has an interest in this logistics space. Yeah. So this agenda for today, we talk about the space itself, supply chain logistics, very large space, covering so many different things, I think. But I hope that after this session, you have a bit more appreciation of what we are doing in each of these different domains within this very large space. Right? And then we'll talk about a few solutions that we have recently launched, the Digital Supply Chain Center, a bit of a mouthful, we'll just call it the DSCC, and a vehicle route planning solution that's more relevant for the current landscape where we are trying to perhaps move to a more delivery focused type of economy, right? So this is for folks who are not familiar with Alibaba as a group, right? We are pretty entrenched in the retail and wholesale space. I think this is where most folks will get to know us. Taobao, AliExpress, Alibaba.com. If you buy stuff and you do some shopping, you would love our products there. We also have under our wing Lazada, which is a fully owned subsidiary by now. If you go to the AXA Tower near downtown, actually there's the Lazada logo right beside the AXA logo right now. Right. So, but in China, we are actually operating as a pretty multifaceted type of a company. So you see, just to give a few examples, we have this Fresh Hippo. Fresh Hippo is our concept of a supermarket. We try to ensure that the food items and products are trackable, traceable, and all that stuff in terms of sources. We also have this I guess there's no choice to pronounce it in Chinese. Elema is called ELEME, right? So it's basically Deliveroo, Food Panda in China. We have Fliggy. Fliggy is a travel website that we can book travels from. And we also have quite a bit of interest in the sort of Youku, basically is a YouTube of China. Right, so we also have Alibaba Pictures. We have a couple of pretty cool films that we have launched. So out of all this, right, all our businesses are actually supported by a few core business units. So of course, Alibaba Cloud being the most important in terms of the IT perspective, we provide the infrastructure for all the technology solutions to be deployed in. We also have AMaps, which is more like a Google Maps, and financial, providing financial and payment services. And very importantly for today's session, Cainiao basically is our logistics platform. So what we do is this handles all the logistics related requests that we need throughout our ecosystem. So today's solutions actually are born out of Cainiao, but because Alibaba Cloud is the technology infrastructure provider, we also are the technology exporter for the entire group, right? So we are one of the largest food and beverage group companies. I guess these are our different channel companies. That's why, in a way, we do understand what are the major pain points in the supply chain ecosystem. I think the most important one, which is something that everybody will have, is where's my stuff? Where are we at this point in time? The whole visibility of the entire supply chain, I think that is something that is still, as of now, I think there are a few point solutions here and there that allows you to trace and track certain stuff, but there's no high level overarching view over where everything is, or what state is my warehouse in, where am I, what problems should I be looking at right now? So I think that part is very important for us. And then from our perspective, once we have tackled the visibility problem, then we can go into the data, what we call data-driven decision making, right? So where you can then say, all the information I have, How do I then leverage on all that, not just for monitoring, but also on making decisions for the future? How should we size warehouses? Which routes are more busy, and should we have more trucks servicing those roads? So those are the decisions that have to come in after we gather all the relevant data. So the first step towards that, right, is a transformation to this, what we call the digital supply chain center, which we'll talk about more later. So this starts with being visible, then more insights, and then you can go smart. Right? So key benefits, I will just briefly run through that. I think some parts are quite obvious to most folks, but certain things like consumer, I think this part actually as logistics or supply chain folks, depending on where you stand within the whole chain, right? You may not be too, having too much of a concept of the consumer. So I think, but that's the part that actually drives most of the rest of the chain, right? So if there's a sudden pickup in demand for face masks, for example, what we are facing right now, how then do we trigger workflows down the entire supply chain to ensure that we can meet those demands? So those things are actually what drives everything else. So it's not the regular warehousing. Those stuff are important, but we do all this because we have consumers who have demand for products. So that's basically the main part. So for us, I think also another part is the quick problem detection. So this one I think we'll slowly cover throughout the rest of the presentation. And also collaboration. There's a means of sending messages or tracking incidents across. When we have incidents, we must be able to track them. Yeah. So this is the Digital Supply Chain Center part, the DSCC introduction. Don't be too worried about this solution architecture. We'll briefly talk about each of the important squares. So we'll try to cover most of these squares. I think what we're trying to say here is that this solution, we're not here to sell you the solution, but I think in terms of each of these boxes could be parts of technologies that you may be looking at, right? So as a collective mindset, you may be in different phases of your digital transformation. So you may be looking at different parts. So we are trying to motivate what could be in these boxes. And then, if you feel free to further the discussion with myself and our team or later, right? So the control tower, basically in our concept, we're actually quite big on this. We actually have op centers and all these dashboards for almost everything, right? So this is actually a way for us to be able to monitor what's happening on the ground. So of course, this abstracts out the major challenge, which is how do we even get the data from that side. So this one, I'll just throw the ball over to Anu. So Anu will settle that later. I think he's talking more about the IoT and the blockchain stuff. So from the customer demand analysis part, this is where things get interesting, which remember what I was talking about previously, is where are we able to, from this demand of even across different regions, different seasons, or you see sudden spikes in demand, how can we use that information and we flow down the entire chain, and then we can be able to spin things up faster. We can preempt certain demands coming in. So this is, I think, most people, this is quite challenging. If let's say most logistics, for example, if you're into logistics, you're probably in the middle portion, right? So you will tell me, hey, how am I able to forecast or foresee consumer demand when I'm not even operating the merchant platform? So that's where we need to be looking at things from a different perspective. If we are not able to forecast consumer demands specifically, perhaps we can have a high level view of based on different addresses, these folks buy different volumes of items. We don't need to know what's inside those items, but that could also help in our planning of how many delivery men do we need, how many trucks do we need, and things like that. So different perspectives for different stages of the supply chain. So from inventory analysis part, I think there's another. Oh yeah, cool. So this is more from the warehousing perspective already. So when we look at the warehouse, how can we then try to reduce our warehouse costs by, purging inventory, right? So when we say unhealthy inventory, it could be inventory that's been there for, sitting there, nobody buys it. It's perhaps it's an old iPad model. Nobody's going to buy it. They're just sitting there wasting space. So are we able to identify these inventory and then try to clear them out using other methods like perhaps fire sales and stuff like that, or other means transferring them to warehouses that are lower cost, things like that. So this is more towards the warehousing side. Fulfillment also towards the warehousing side, inbound, outbound. Are we healthy when it comes to, are we overcrowding our warehouse, or is our warehouse underutilized? So there's a sweet spot that we want to be in. So this provides us with a bit of monitoring. So this is based on all the data that we can collect from your inbound, outbound orders, right? So at the computer level, right, as long as we have all the data in place, this is actually pretty straightforward to handle. But currently the problem is even in China, even in a lot of our partner sort of ecosystem, most of the folks are still doing things manually. So it becomes that we are tracking. We are like, hey, what's going on here? So there's a lot of steps that need to be taken before we can get to this point where we can get all the data in, and then the stuff that I'm talking about today, right, are the easy stuff. The hard part is getting the data online. It's more towards the customer side. Are the customers happy with the delivery times? What are the complaints that they have? So this can actually help with your eventual, deciding. Could be also SLAs that you have with your suppliers or your customers, basically the folks that entrust you to deliver their goods. So this can actually help to justify to them that, hey, the folks are here on time and all that stuff. Yeah. And I think towards the end, right, what we are looking at is actually how do we then integrate all these different channels into our supply chain ecosystem. Right, you see, everybody comes in with their own systems, with their own requirements. How then, as a you're managing a supply chain, even let's say for a product, right? So you have all these raw materials coming in from different places, even. Right? How then are we able to have a high level view, or even at a lower level view, if you want, of what's going on within that supply chain? If this vendor suddenly disappears, can we then find another person to handle that, right? So, and does that disrupt? Does that mean we have to spin up a whole new systems, whole new applications for my entire workflow, right? So I think the next slide would be more towards of, I think, what we want to do from the data perspective, right? So I think we are jumping around a bit, but hang in there with me. So this is, I feel personally, one of the more important parts of all kinds of systems. Basically, you're talking about data coming in from manufacturing, for example. Look at the bottom: manufacturing, procurement, orders, all kinds of things. Right? You have also external data. How can we, harmonize and standardize that data, that we can build applications that are not just, this application is just for this company, this application is for that company. Can we have one demand forecasting for my entire company? And then we can basically ingest data. We can make use of data from all the different sources, right? So this is the part where it's a bit more important. So this concept is what we call the data mid-end, not just applied to the supply chain ecosystem. We have used this to great success across our group, where we have definitions, for example, for something as simple as a product, right? If you go to product, for example, so we can have different definitions for the same thing. Let's say products in your one of your business units, you call it, you identify them by SKUs. The other business unit calls them item numbers. The other calls them product numbers. So then, from the data perspective, right, you have to have a customized code basically to address each of these products and then, make use of them when it comes to the application side. So for us, what we are trying to do is standardize things. Same definition for customers, products, everything else. You don't have to touch your CRM systems. You don't have to touch your accounting systems. We ingest the data in, and then we do that one-time conversion, one-time standardization. And once you have your common data pool here, everything else becomes easy, right? You can build everything that I talked about just now, straightforward, right? Your BI tool reporting, everything is very straightforward. Apps can be built on top of it. Biggest problem with big data, everybody's talking about big data. It's not the big data models, it's not the training and everything. Everything's out there. It's just the availability of data and how the quality of the data that you bring in. So this data mid-end segment, right? This component is quite important to ensure the data availability and the data quality. Yeah. All right. So after all of that, okay, so everybody's most favorite stuff is KPIs. So with that, actually, this is the part within our dashboard, our system, that allows you to define matrix. So because you have everything all set up, right? Then can we have new matrix? For example, how length of time that each package is delivered, for example. So that can be a KPI that we can track. So with these data, with the visibility of what's happening in your ecosystem, then you're able to set metrics that say, hey, we want to track how many packages are late, how many packages have been in the warehouse for too long and all that stuff. So you could set these metrics, and then you don't have to look into all the nitty-gritty stuff. You can just look at the matrix level. Are we healthy? Are we not healthy? Right. So I mean, different folks will look into different granularities of the data. Yeah. Right. Reporting goes along with the KPI stuff. Right. If things are not going well, then you have a portal, you have a app. It's quite straightforward for most folks. Yeah. All right. So that's basically it for the DSCC part. Right now, I only have a couple more slides left, so I'll be pretty quick. So this vehicle route planning is also part of the Taimiao system. So what we have here is, think about it, because we are looking at SMEs, local companies that are moving into this whole delivery concept, right? I envision, at least for the next 6 months, I don't think we're going to be able to be shopping en masse in at Vivo City or whatever, right? So deliveries definitely important. So what happens now is, if let's say you are a small business owner, you sell stuff, right? And then right now every day you're getting like 5 to 10 orders. Okay, fine. I can dispatch those orders very easily. I can say, hey, this person will deliver orders ABC, the other one will deliver DEF, right? So you can dispatch it yourself manually, fine. But once we get the order numbers up to, let's say you have 50 orders a day, 100 orders a day, we're not even talking about thousands, 50. So who delivers what to where, right? So that becomes a major pain point for the business owners. So what we have in this vehicle route planning solution is basically this. You give me a list of your orders, addresses, and some constraints. It could be the size of the product, it could be the size of your vehicle, it could be the working hours of your delivery man, right? So you give me those constraints and the information, and I already have the model. I crunch them. I tell you, hey, this delivery guy in this vehicle will deliver these orders, right? Straightforward stuff. So this is a API that's basically readily available for use right now. Yeah. So this actually is born out of our smart dispatching, because we have a Food Panda equivalent. Previously, it was quite intense. They have a 29-minute guarantee for delivery. And if it doesn't deliver by 29 minutes, actually the whole meal is free. So yeah, we lost a lot of money from there, but also we saved. We learned quite a lot from this whole experience, where how can we challenge ourselves to deliver things fast. Right? I think that's the important part. And this is a bit more of a segue if you are more B2B or enterprise type of you're looking at more into the container optimization. I think this is not just from China. Actually, most of the solutions I talk about we are not the only ones providing. So this session is more of a, how do we rejig our mind frame into thinking about technologies when it comes to logistics.